This is Cai Tanikawa Oglesby, contributing editor of this issue of Dizzy magazine. When I met Kenichi Mori, it was both my first time in Sapporo and my first time conducting an interview. I met him at noon at Hotaro des Hotaru, Hotaro meaning firefly, an antique shop where he was exhibiting an assortment of paintings, old and new. We didn't end up parting ways until 8 o'clock that night. After our interview, he took me to get miso ramen, originally a Hokkaido specialty, to a snow-covered riverbank where the sun was setting at just 4 p.m., and several galleries where I was introduced to other artists in the Sapporo art world. The art community is much friendlier here than in Tokyo, he told me, in a mix of Japanese, English, and French. Mori knows the latter from his 6 years in France, where he studied fine art at École des Beaux-Arts de Versailles. Neither of us are fluent in each other's native tongues, but we made it work despite our limited vocabularies. To get such a welcoming reception from someone who identifies as a loner was a compelling discovery of his character. Mori did not start painting until he was 18 years old, following a judo incident resulting in a fairly serious head injury. He confided that he often feels like an outsider, alluding to this in his work. When looking at his paintings, it is as if Mori lives in an alternate reality where vibrant and psychedelic colors, perhaps on a dress or tablecloth, interact with dark, silvery hybrid creatures. Weaving narratives and undertones of folk tales throughout specific series, Mori's work feels cautionary while still alluring and sensual. In this world, the viewer may be unsure of whether to be amused or disturbed. The figures often look directly at the viewer, leaving us feeling exposed. It is a confrontation evoking dignity and power from the painted subjects. In the following interview, I will be referring to myself and Kenichi Mori by our initials, me being CTO and Kenichi Mori being KM. CTO. Do you do a lot of things like this that are not exactly exhibitions, but rather in a store or restaurant? KM. For most of my solo shows, I decide on an overall concept in order to create a consistent series. That's why I rarely do this kind of show, although these are all works from the past year or two. I consider exhibitions to be more of a series of works, so it's rare that I show different concepts at once. For example, the exhibition I did this summer was a series based on worker bees, and my most recent exhibition was about the sexual relationship between men and women. So exhibiting something like this is unusual for me. CTO. We noticed a lot of figurative pairs, twins, or reflections protecting each other, many of which are girls or women. What does this represent? KM. It's like the opposing principles of the yin-yang. By portraying two girls, it represents the two sides of the world, lightness and darkness, inside and outside, hope and despair. CTO. Some of them look like young girls and some of them older. KM. The figures are a more humanized version of Buddhist statues. Europeans used to base human figures off of Greek sculptures, so I thought it'd be interesting for me to reference a Japanese Buddhist symbol. I know it's hard to tell their age. CTO. You mentioned Taoism and Buddhism a lot. Do you consider yourself religious? KM. I'm not sure. I do find religion interesting as a concept, but I don't necessarily consider myself religious. I try to depict something that's in between the Eastern and Western cultures as if I'm depicting something between an animal and a human. This is like the forbidden fruit. But I do want to mix the ideas of Taoism into my work while introducing new perspectives, so I try to create in a way that overcomes religion without creating too much distinction between them. CTO. In Anata to Watashi, Anata wa Watashi, you and me, you are me, what was your thought process when making the decision to write this title in katakana? Katakana is typically used for non-Japanese words, and normally these sentences would be written in a mix of kanji and hiragana. KM. This is a matter of Japanese nuances, but katakana feels symbolic in a way. By converting watashi, myself, into katakana, it becomes more symbolic or mechanical, and it somehow takes away from cultural attributions than kanji. When I write in kanji, which are Chinese characters, I consider watashi to be myself within the context of others that surround you, but in katakana it more directly means myself without the cultural connotation. It may be difficult for non-Japanese speakers to understand this. I guess if something is written in kanji, it feels more historical, and in katakana it feels more futuristic. I also thought there could be a new way of thinking about the nuances of being myself. CTO. The next question is about your color palette. In your older work, you use darker earth tones, and recently there's brighter colors that are almost psychedelic. What do these color palettes mean to you? KM. I always keep classic and modern paintings in mind and incorporate both elements. I choose colors that are not only classical but also fluorescent colors seen in today's world. I may incorporate one bright color into an overall earth-toned classic-style painting or use classic colors in a modern motif. It's my style to mix things up, so I decide on the colors according to the exhibition. In my recent exhibition, the theme was classic, but I used psychedelic colors, which is a good example of how I mix classic and contemporary elements. CTO. And the usage of words? KM. In modernist paintings, Picasso and others around him started this technique. I think it also adds a poster-like quality to paintings, like an advertisement or a commercial. I try to incorporate this type of modern media methods, but in actuality, old Oriental landscape paintings and art included written poems, so that may be where my influence comes from. Even in that sense, I tend to fuse classic and modern elements together. CTO. In the older works, I noticed that there's a lot of circus elements and clowns, so can you talk about that and where that comes from? KM. I used the circus as a subject for 2 of my series. Before I became an artist, I was a traveling portraitist. I used to travel around festivals, and as an entertainer, I resonated with the circus. What I do now also has similarities to being in a circus in the fact that I don't know what will happen in the near future, or wondering whether or not my work is useful to society. I use the circus as a metaphor in my work because I sympathize with it. As an artist or entertainer, we are all outsiders of society, so I value the perspective of the world from where I stand. The circus holds enchantment and also a quality of melancholy and loneliness. I think the series with the circus represents who I am more than my other works. It's more emotional than philosophical. CTO. Are you from Sapporo? How did that impact your approach to art in your life? KM. Oh, that's a difficult question. Japan doesn't value art and is very behind compared to places like France, where art is a part of the society. I do see that there is an interest in art, but Japanese artists and the art system in Japan isn't very good, so it's difficult for art to reach the general public. The art market here is small and people rarely buy art. Even though there is as much interest in art, especially modern art, as there is in Europe, it feels like the general public is separated from the art industry. When I lived in France, I felt that art was well incorporated into society. It's very different from Japan. CTO. Why do you think that is? KM. I think it's about authoritarianism. The school systems have a lot of power. There's also a tendency of dependency. There are so many art schools and so many publicly sponsored exhibitions, don't you think? There are too many art organizations, too. CTO. You think there's not enough freedom? KM. There's not much freedom. Politically as well, Japan is all about authoritarianism. I try to think of my work in the context of the Japanese system. Japan tends to separate subcultures and fine art. I don't think it needs to be as divided as it is. In Europe and the United States, art is created within the context of their society, so for me, I'm trying to create many different works in order to bring together the general public and artists as much as I can within my country's context. For that reason, I try very hard to make my work enjoyable by a wide group of audiences while adhering to the concepts of the East and West.
All of the artwork is courtesy of the artist. Photography by Cai Tanikawa Oglesby. Introduction translation by Miri Matsufuji. An interview translation by Reiko Lux. On the first page is a portrait of Kenichi Mori. He is wearing a black hat and a black long coat with a black scarf and black shoes. He stands on bricks, and behind the bricks are snow, creating an all-white background. He is holding one of his paintings, which depicts 3 men, half human, half fly, in black and gray on a turquoise background. On the next page is a piece titled Dog from 2019. It is oil and tempera on panel, 107.4 by 86.6 inches. The painting depicts a woman wearing a dominatrix-style dress. It is red and she has matching gloves and shoes. Her hair is black with bangs. She is holding a leash, and crouched at her feet is a creature with an animalistic body and the face of a man looking concerned. He wears a red collar attached to the leash. On the following page is a painting titled Burning Tree, Amor es et mor, from 2018. Oil and tempera on panel, 19.6 by 23.8 inches. In the painting, two women hold each other and look solemn. One of them wears a pink dress and is holding some sort of obscure creature. Her eyes look down. The woman to her right wears a blue dress and looks directly at the viewer. They both have the same hairstyle, black shoulder-length hair with bangs. They stand in a green field of grass, and in the distance, a tree is burning, smoke billowing into the muted yellow and brown sky. On the next page are two photographs taken by Kai at the antique shop where Kenichi Mori had his exhibition. The photo on the top is a detail of a table which shows different knickknacks, including dolls, pine cones, candles, a 2020 calendar designed by Mori, face masks, pins, and stickers with his artwork on it. The photo below shows a wider shot of the antique store. Mori's paintings are on the wooden walls. There's also a clock across, a cabinet, and the table that we have seen a detail from in the previous photo. The next artwork is titled Forbidden Fruit, Désir et Tentation, from 2018. Oil and tempera on panel, 20.8 by 16 inches. The painting depicts the same two women that we saw in the previous one, or at least they look similar. In the foreground, one of them wears a red dress with a white collar and a red bow. She reaches upwards towards a vine that is coming down from the top of the painting with 3 red apples. Behind her, the other woman is wearing a dark green dress with a white collar and a green bow. She is holding up her hand as if she is whispering into the other woman's ear. Wrapped around the first woman at the bottom, we see the tail of the woman in the background, and it appears to be that of a snake. On the following page is a painting titled Mace, Perdue et Éclair, from 2018. Oil and tempera on panel, 19.6 by 23.8 inches. In the piece, the same girl is wearing a red dress with a white collar and a red bow. She is centered, facing directly at the viewer. Over her shoulder is a figure wearing an inari face mask, which looks like the face of a white fox with yellow eyes and a snarled mouth. The figure has a collar that resembles a jester. The rest of their outfit is blue. They hold a green apple, and it appears as if they are trying to place it in the girl's hands. Their other hand is placed on her shoulder. Behind and all around them is a green maze made of shrubs. Within the maze, we see various figures, including a wolf, an old lady, a hand, a cannon, and a man holding flowers. The next spread is a painting titled That Summer Apple Orchard from 2017, oil on canvas, 9.5 by 13 inches. In the foreground of the picture is the trunk of a tree, and peeking out from behind it, an anthropomorphized spider. The body of the spider is that of a spider, whereas the head is that of a woman. Next to her head is a juicy red apple. The rest of the painting depicts the apple orchard, green grass, dark brown trees, and dark green leaves with red apples in them. On the bottom left of the painting is Mori's signature. The following piece is titled Chase, the Fruit of Eve, from 2017, oil and acrylic on canvas, 23.8 by 35.8 inches. In this piece, a woman wearing a red fur-trimmed dress and red fur-trimmed cape, brown high-heeled boots, runs with her face in terror as the tote slung over her shoulder holding apples opens and the green apples fall out behind her. She is being chased by a very scary-looking wolf that almost has the body of a man as he is able to stand up and run towards her. They are surrounded by the trunks of trees. The next piece is titled Masks, Réalité et Fiction, 2018, oil and tempura on paper, 18 by 18 inches. In this piece, there are two female figures once again. One is wearing a green cloak, the hood trimmed with fur. The other one wears a red cloak, hood trimmed with fur as well. They are both holding masks. The girl in the green cloak's mask looks like the face of a woman, whereas the girl wearing the red cloak holds a mask that looks like that of a harlequin. Behind them are big trees covered with snow. On the following page is a painting titled Fruit of Wisdom, the Fruit of Eve, 2017, oil and tempera on panel, 10.7 by 8.6 inches. In this piece, a young girl wearing a blue dress with a white collar, white socks, black shoes, and a red bow in her hair sits on a wooden chair with her hands outstretched. Next to her is an older woman wearing a red cape with a hood. She is holding a green apple and leaning towards the young girl. The final piece in Kenichi Mori's feature is titled Dualism, 2018, oil and tempera on panel, 13 by 18 inches. Once again, we see his signature two female figures standing side by side, one in a red dress and red bow, the other in a green dress with the dark green bow. They are both holding dolls. The one on the left's doll is wearing a leotard, thigh-high black boots, and black sunglasses. The girl on the right is holding the same doll, except the outfit is rope bondage covering the doll's eyes as well. They stand framed within a red curtain. They're in front of a table with a pink tablecloth and a platter with one apple cut in half on top. Behind that is brown grass and a dark blue sky.